Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. So today we have our DAT Bootcamp Workshop of the semester, and we have a special guest here today with Shazad. If you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Hi, hey everyone. I'm Shazad. I work with DAT Bootcamp. I'm also a first-year dental student at Boston University. And Camille and I have been talking for the last couple of weeks, and it's great for her to extend the invitation for me to come speak. So I'm excited to share my knowledge and get to know you all.
All right. So pretty much what we're gonna do today is give you sort of like an overview of what the DAT is all about, how to apply, the scoring, the different sections. The most important part is just how to prepare for it, and some tips and tricks from us, e-board members who have already taken the DAT from Shazad. So pretty interesting. All right, so the first thing that you need to apply to take the DAT is a DEN PIN, which is a number, an 8-digit number. And this is a very important number because you're going to need it later on for applications. So it's really important that you, write it down somewhere safe. And then this is the link that you can use to get your DEN PIN. And then to apply for the actual exam, you need, besides the DEN PIN, you need a period of within 4 to 6 months prior to your test date, just so you allow yourself to have enough time to study and prepare for it. The actual DAT is $475 and is non-refundable. So it's pretty important that you plan accordingly. And when you're applying for the DAT, it's also really, really important that all the personal information that you put in the application is exactly the same as whatever document you're gonna use, whether it's your passport, your license, or credit card. Because if you get there and the information doesn't match, your test is invalid and you're not gonna be able to take it. So that's pretty important. You want to find yourself in that position. All right. And then after you apply, they're gonna send you an email. You can go to prometric.com, which is the website where you schedule, you reserve like a test spot in a certain test location. And it's important that you make sure that your test location is correct. And again, that you have given yourself enough time to study for it. And also it's really good the mentality that you have. Like you have to think of your first attempt not as a trial and error, but like the only time that you're gonna take it. There's no shame if you have to take it again. That's perfectly fine. But it's good that if you really prepare properly for it the first time, so you don't have to find yourself taking it again. And then it's always good to confirm your exam within 48 hours, just to confirm that everything is good with the testing center. And remember that you cannot cancel. You can cancel it, but there's no refunds, and you already paid $500. So it's pretty good. It's a good plan to really plan out those 3 months and really allow yourself to have enough time to study for it. And this is just a little chart with the fees that you will have to pay depending on when you reschedule prior to the testing appointment. The closer to your testing date, your schedule, the more you're gonna have to pay. So again, plan accordingly. And then I don't know, Shasad, if you want to take over from here.
Perfect. Thank you, Camille. So basically, you're going to be tested on 6 subjects on the DAT. It's going to be bio, gen chem, orgo, organic chem, quantitative reasoning, which is just math, and then reading comprehension. So those are your 5 like standard academic subjects, and then you also have PAT, which is your perceptual ability test. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides. But the classes that you need to do well in the DAT are you're going to have to take like bio 1 and 2, Chem 1 and 2, and Orgo 1 and 2. There's no physics section on the DAT, which is nice, but you will need it as a prereq to get into dental school. So while you don't need to have taken it, before, you will have to eventually take it at some point before you graduate. So recommended classes: physio, genetics, cell bio, microbiome, ecology, and evolution. These are all subjects that you can see have questions on the DAT. it's nice, like if you go on the ADA website and basically just like look at the information that they have on the DAT, they list out all of the, subsections for each topic or for each subject that will be tested. So like for bio, we'll give an exact breakdown of all of the subjects that could be tested. So it's around 5-ish hours, the whole thing, like 4.5, 5 hours. And the way it starts is that at the beginning, you have a 15-minute optional tutorial. So I want to say most students don't really do this, but it's definitely good because it can get you acclimated to the software that the test uses because it's all online. So you'll learn how to, go forward, go back, like move through questions, review sections at the end if you want to go back to previous questions. So there's that option. You can dive straight into the Survey of Natural Sciences, which is your bio, gen chem, and orgo. You're going to have 100 total questions to answer in 90 minutes. And the breakdown of that is that you're going to have 40 bio questions and then 30 questions in each chemistry section. And it will go in that order. It won't be like interspersed. After that, you go straight into your perceptual ability, where you have 90 questions to answer in 60 minutes. From there, you get a 30-minute break, and I definitely recommend that you use maybe not all of the 30 minutes, but definitely give yourself a break. Use the restroom if you need to, and even if you don't think you need to, because something could happen and you end up like I've been in tests before where I actually have needed to use the bathroom and it kind of affects your performance. So just keep that in mind. Definitely bring a snack because taking the test is tiring, so you'll need something to keep your fuel up, and then definitely bring water or some sort of hydration. From there, you go into the last two sections, which is your reading comprehension, so 50 questions in 60 minutes, and then your quantitative reasoning, 40 questions in 45 minutes. And then you have a post-test survey, but I didn't do this. I don't know a lot of students that do this just because it's nice because your scores for the DAT show up immediately once you're done taking the test. Compared to like the MCAT where you have to wait 2 to 3 weeks. So it's super nice for you to get your scores back right away. And a lot of students are like, eager to see that. So they skip through that post-test survey and then your scores come up right at the end, which is awesome. So the scoring is a little bit weird. Your main score, if you look here, the second bullet point at the bottom, it's the academic average. And basically that's the average of everything except for your PAT and your total science. Total science is your, bio, gen chem, and orgo. And I say, average with quotation marks just because the way that the DAT score is scored is that it's standardized to a curve based off of all of the other students who are taking it on the same day. So it's standardized to that. So it's not as simple as just taking the average. So nationwide, the average is around 17 to 18, and the average for acceptance for most schools is around a 20. And the last bullet point here says the scoring scale is very steep. So on the next slide, you will see basically the number of like raw questions that you need to get your standardized score. So if you look at the first column, you have your standardized scores, and then the next column is the number of scores you'll need in your QR section to get each score. So if you notice 40 out of 40 questions, you're going to get a 30, which is awesome. And then if you get one question wrong, get a 39. Your standardized score is a 29. If you get two wrong, it jumps down to a 26, and then so on and so forth. So while the scale is steep, don't stress too much that that the score is a 30. You're not getting close to a 30 just because I don't really know anyone who's ever gotten a 30. For example, a 23 is the 98th percentile usually nationwide. So while it may seem like there's a huge gap between 23 and 30, a 23 is an incredible score. So anything above a 20 definitely puts you as a pretty competitive applicant. So how do you do well in the DAT? So I'm from DAT Bootcamp. Obviously, I'm going to plug DAT Bootcamp, but there are other resources out there. Everyone knows each other. Everyone knows yourself best, and you'll know what you need to study. But as an individual, as a student who's used DAT Bootcamp in the past when I was studying for the DAT and now working for them, DAT Bootcamp basically has everything you need to do well on the DAT. We have like all of the sections. We have thousands of practice questions, a lot of videos, a lot of interactive videos in terms of learning like the general chemistry and organic chemistry material. And what's really nice is that we also have a study schedule that basically delineates everything that you should aim to accomplish on a day-to-day basis. So there's that. And you can also look at the ADA official candidate DAT 2020 candidate guide, sample questions. Use Quizlet or things like Anki, basically just flashcard that are good for spaced repetition and studying over and over again. We have our mobile app, which is nice. Like if you're walking to class, you can do some PAT practice on your phone, and then our Facebook study group on Facebook. It's super nice because there are literally thousands of other students that are in the same boat. So you can post questions, try to form study groups with people who are close by to you, et cetera, et cetera. Who made DAT Bootcamp? So this is Ari, he's my boss. Graduated from Columbia a couple years ago. He now solely works on DAT Bootcamp, and we're starting to sort of spin into other areas of education because we've realized that the infrastructure that we have is super important and it's super well set up. So we've started developing, a boot camp for like the integrated national dental board exams for dental students. We've pivoted to anatomy boot camp, which is for anyone who's in, the medical field, the dental field, PAs, anything like that. So if you have any questions, definitely feel free to shoot him an email on our website. It's super nice. We have just a nifty little like messaging feature on the bottom right corner that you can send us a message. And we like to pride ourselves in our ability to constantly, have a very quick turnaround time between students asking us questions and us answering them. So any questions that you have, definitely feel free to shoot us a message. So I alluded to this a little bit, but why DAT Bootcamp? We have a lot of practice tests and we have 10 full-length practice tests. And the second bullet point, you'll see that we like to basically just simulate the exact testing situations that you're going to experience on DAT on the actual day that you take your DAT. So we basically have built our software to nearly exactly mimic what you're going to see, just because when you get to the actual DAT, we don't want you to be thrown for a loop when you get to that day. So, you do well when you're comfortable with the situation. So if you've been in the situation before and you've taken multiple practice tests before, you're going to be just fine. Over 5,000 questions, a lot of videos, a lot of answer videos and stuff like that. True exam simulation. And like I was saying, the study schedule. So we have two subscriptions. We have a 90-day subscription and a 180-day subscription. The 180-day subscription is a little bit more pricey, but you get more practice questions incorporated into that subscription that the 90-day students would have to purchase separately. Our study schedule. So the sweet spot for studying for the DAT is around 3 months. Most students utilize our 90-day subscription. Our study schedule is around 60-ish days, and we purposely did that because we know that a lot of students won't directly follow that study schedule, to a T. So we've incorporated rest days. We've basically built in extra cushion days that students will probably need. So we like to keep it a little bit more condensed, just knowing the fact that students will adapt it to their own needs. So 3 final tips: stick to your schedule. It's extremely important to not just try to like dive in and sort of free float and try to do it freehand. Definitely customize your schedule if you need, and then go from there. Take study breaks. You're not going to be able to study 6 hours a day for 3 months straight. Try to intersperse and space out your time. Do an hour here, take a break, an hour there, take a break. And if you don't feel ready, I think Camille was saying this at the beginning, don't take the exam just to take the exam, just because while taking it multiple times isn't, looked down upon. If you take it, 2 or 3 times, that's fine. But there's no need to waste $500 if you truly don't feel confident in going into the actual day. Thank you and good luck. So with that, before I was going to share a little bit more about myself and my journey as a pre-dental student. But before we would transition to that, does anyone have any questions that are DAT or DAT bootcamp related? Open the chat. Feel free to unmute yourselves, type it in the chat.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, not that I want to take it, like 1,000 times, but just up to how many times can you take the test?
I think 3, and then if you need to take it more than 3 times, you need to get some sort of special accommodation from like the ADA.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
For sure.
I wanted to say something. So first, thank you so much for your presentation and to the club for hosting this. And second, I've heard that the DAT focuses mainly on Orgo 1. Is that true? Like, I'm not sure. That's just like a quote I've heard being thrown around.
I honestly can't speak to that. I'm not entirely sure, just because it's been 3 years removed now from the actual content on the DAT. But I would just basically take a look at what the ADA has outlined, and anything that the ADA has outlined in terms of what's going to be tested on the actual DAT, like DAT Bootcamp, always keeps our ear to the ground and like tries to talk to students who have taken it recently and just try to gauge where the direction of the test is going. So if there's any radical switch or, you know, anything like that, we're always prepared. So if you use DAT Bootcamp in the future, everything that we have outlined is what you need. I can't really speak to if it's Orgo 1 or Orgo 2 heavy, but the material that you'll use will be geared towards you doing well in the DAT. Kind of a roundabout answer, but
Yeah, I got it. Thank you so much.
for sure.
Just to answer that question, it's pretty much both. It's 50-50. You're going to have the same amount of Orgo 1 and Orgo 2.
All right, thank you.
I have a question. So I'm taking the DAT after my spring semester. So I'm studying like right now for the DAT, but I'm also taking classes. So do you have any like tip to, I know organization is the key here, but any other tip or something you can tell me?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, just stick to a study schedule, and it seems like, you're accustomed to that. I didn't take it during school, and so like obviously it's not impossible, right? Like thousands of students take it during school every year, but I think just trying to find, maybe if you know people who are also taking the DAT at some point that are like within the ballpark that you are, try to buddy up with them and just use each other as as motivation and like being in the same boat. Just because I found that trying to study for something by yourself is a lot harder than doing it with another person or like another group of people. So if you can find people, then maybe you can have a dedicated study time to like keep each other like hold each other accountable, keep each other motivated, things like that. But I think it just boils down to that and just persisting despite everything and sticking to your study schedule.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I have a question. So I've heard a lot of reviews. I mean, every single section on bootcamp is on point. I did a mistake taking iPrep. Unfortunately, that program is a complete scam. But yeah, bootcamp is amazing. But also, I've heard that like past cycle students have been getting like 17, 18s on the bio section. And I've heard like from 2 to 3 people that took the test, they said that the bootcamp bio part wasn't enough or that they studied from Dr. Romano's notes too. I'm asking because like I'm gonna study for the DAT this summer. So are you guys gonna like change some stuff or like add to the bio part or yeah?
Yeah, so I think like I was saying, we always try to keep our ear to the ground and try to figure out everything that we're lacking. So a lot of what we do is we reach out to current students who have taken the DAT and sort of get feedback from them and listen to because we love to hear constructive criticism, because obviously our material isn't perfect and obviously there are going to be things that we're lacking. So I can't speak specifically just because I'm not on the content team, so I don't know the exact direction. But I do know that like we're always seeking advice and feedback from students. So if there are things that are lacking, we try to adapt it as quickly as we can. But like obviously you have heard from students that there are some portions of the bio section from us that is lacking. So maybe try to explore some other things that you could use as supplement materials just to make sure you're getting different sources of information that will come together as a whole.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if this helps, but I had DAT Bootcamp before, and now I have it again, and like I have it like a longer time, and now they just implemented something called BioBytes, and it helps a lot like while reading. They didn't have it before, so maybe that's the change that they made, but just to let you know, it's really, really helpful. Okay.
Yeah. I can thank you, Talia. Thank you for saying that, just because that, yeah, so these bio bites are basically just like the content team has designed them to be just like they've branded them as like snackable questions. Basically, it's just something that you can use to make sure that you're staying on top of the material. They're not designed to be super challenging. They're just designed to make sure that you're retaining all of that information. So I think they've added close to 1,000 new bio bites questions for the 15 or so chapters for bio. So like, yeah, that's one of the ways that we try to adapt and stuff. If I'm planning to take the DAT around October, would April be a good time to enroll for the exam? So when you say enroll, do you mean like sign up? I would say yes. Yeah, I think just
Yeah, sign up. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, so May, June, July, August, September, October. Yeah, I mean, I think April might even be a little bit on the earlier side, but as long as you do it sometime within 3 months from when you actually plan to take it, 3 or 4 months before is good, just because it gives you that set goal towards working towards. So April or May is you're definitely in the right ballpark.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just to put it out there, guys, when I took my DAT, the only resource that I used was DAT Bootcamp, and it worked perfectly fine for me. The bio section, I know some people have complained about not having enough information, but also remember that bio is so dense, so you can't just use one resource for bio. The more you can use, the better. Don't like overwhelm yourself, but at least use like 2 resources just so you can be exposed to the most amount of information possible. But honestly, overall, it's a very well structured program and is really user friendly. Like it's easy to use, and there's so much practice questions and tests, which is the most important part, testing yourself. So it's really well structured, and I highly, highly recommend it. From my
I was a bio major, and my lowest score on the DAT was bio. And like, yeah, I think Camille said that really well. It's the hardest subject to study for just because it's so broad. So, take that with a grain of salt.
How do you recommend studying for bio? Like, do you read it and highlight, or do you read it and write everything down with your like handwriting, or do you type it?
Yeah, great question. So what I've started doing, I don't know if you guys know what Anki is.
Yeah, flashcards.
Yeah, so I started using the Anki during my first semester of dental school. Like I had previously done like a lot of like handwriting stuff, just because I've found that in the past handwriting is, yeah, exactly, it's OP. I found that for me handwriting was super helpful, but just trying to keep up with all of the material in school is super hard. So I basically just like watch a lecture and got like from that, using the material, like all of the important stuff, I basically just make my own Anki decks and just study for that. And it's super nice just because it's space studying. So if you know the material super well, then you can, punt that card to like the back of your deck and it'll pop up in like 4 or 5 days. And if you don't know it super well and you're kind of struggling with it, you can keep setting it to come up within like every 10 minutes or like the next day or the next day after that. So to study for bio, since it's so dense, I think just reading through the chapter, because you need to expose yourself, and then from that chapter make your own Anki if you can. But I know this, it's super time consuming to make your own deck, so like there's pros and cons it's helpful to make your own just because you know what's on it and it's tailored towards your own studying as opposed to trying to learn someone else's decks, but it takes a while. So trying to find a nice balance of that and then just going from there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. So I can, Camille, do you mind if you stop sharing your screen just so I could see everyone's faces and then I can share a little bit more about myself?
Of course.
Thank you. Sweet. So like I was saying, I'm a first year dental student at Boston University. I graduated college in 2019. I went to a small liberal arts school called Williams College. It's in Western Mass. Very quick aside and not related to me at all, but is your guys' mascot like a cat of some sort? Is it a jaguar?
A panther.
It's a panther.
Cool. Sweet. So I grew up swimming, and during college we would go on like training trips and stuff. And I'm pretty sure I went to FIU for one of my training trips, because I remember like the mascot outside the pool always walking into that. So that's pretty cool. So yeah. So I graduated in 2019. I was a bio and public health major. I swam all through, growing up. I swam in college. I was senior co-captain my senior year and graduated in 2019, and I submitted my application then. So I submitted it June 2019. I took a gap year, worked as a swim coach, which is kind of atypical, but it was definitely a point of conversation in my interviews, which was cool. I applied to around 15 schools and interviewed at 6, and I interviewed at Boston University, Penn, UConn, Tufts, Case Western, and UC San Francisco. And I interviewed on the earlier side just because I'd submitted my application early June. So the application cycle is on a rolling basis. So it opens up June 1st to June 2nd, just depending on the year and what that day falls on. And the earlier you submit, the earlier that the schools will review your application and go from there. So when you are considering taking your DAT, when you're considering applying, definitely try to plan it out such that you're on the earlier end of the application cycle as opposed to being later. And I interviewed, I was accepted into 5 out of those 6 schools. And then by December, I knew I was going to BU, and I kind of just had a relaxing spring of last year. And then I matriculated this past August and now in our second semester. So it's definitely been extremely busy, but it's a lot of fun once you're on the other side.
Why Boston?
So I grew up in Boston. I'm currently still living at home. I'm like 15 minutes away from school, which is super nice. And for me, my school choices came down between BU and Penn, and financials was a huge reason. Like I think the cost of attendance at Penn was around $125,000 per year. So that was definitely a lot. So when you're considering, so taking a step back, when you are considering where to apply, definitely keep it within a feasible range just because the applications themselves are extremely expensive. Then you factor in, hopefully post-COVID, like travel will be normal, but you factor in travel to the school, lodging if you're staying for the night, food and et cetera. And like those costs, really, really pile up. So definitely keep financials in mind in terms of when you're applying, and definitely when you're choosing a school, definitely keep financials in mind and like how many loans you're willing to take out. Are you interested in doing a career in like the Army or the Navy? Because then there's that loan forgiveness program where if you let the Navy pay for 2 of your years of schooling, you're going to do 2 years of service immediately post-graduation. There's the health professional scholarship program in terms of like loan forgiveness and everything like that. So there's a lot of ways to make your dental education cost effective in terms of trying to find everything, but you just gotta do a lot of research in terms of what scholarships are out there, figure out what your career path looks like, and just go from there. Any questions about the interview process,
Yeah. What was your interview like at UPenn and also at UCSF if you went there? I don't know if
Yeah.
you went there.
Yes. So Penn was pretty cool. So at Penn, I was interviewed by two people. Penn actually sets it up really, really nicely in that one of your interviews is from a faculty member, and that's your open file one where they've gone through your application and they know you, and they're basically just will pull stuff from your application and basically ask you to elaborate on that. All of my interviews that I've been on were all very conversational. It wasn't really like a rapid Q&A between them and myself. Basically, they would ask me something and I would just organically go from there, which was super nice. So my first interview was with a faculty member, and then the second interview is an interview with basically a staff at the school. So it doesn't have to be a person that's in dentistry. So I was interviewed by someone from like their accounting department, and that was the closed file interview. And I think it's nice that they do that because they're just trying to demonstrate to you that everyone who works with Penn Dental, regardless if they're dentistry related or not, like it's all one community. So like they want you to know that they view themselves as one community and that everyone is Penn, right? So it's not just you only exposing yourself to, the faculty and, the clinical dentistry professors and stuff like that. So the staff interview was closed file. So it was just him and I just sort of chatting. It ended up, his family is like from my hometown. So we just like talked about that for half an hour, which was super funny. So Penn was definitely very interesting. I really enjoyed my interview experience at Penn. And then at UCSF, two interviews as well. One was with a student, one was with a faculty member, and same kind of setup. The faculty interview was an open file and the student interview was closed file. So there are pros and cons to open versus closed. So like open, you kind of know what to expect. They know who you are. So there's that. But then you're a little nervous, like, because what if they ask you about something on your application and you can't, you kind of like stutter and you can't really forget what you forget what you've written. So definitely know your application extremely well and don't put things on there that you're gonna stumble over and like you're just putting on there to like fluff up your application. Just basically put everything on your application that is you and don't try to over embellish. And in terms of like the close file, I kind of like those more just because it's basically just you meeting another person. You just like trying to find some sort of common ground and going from there. So I felt like there was a little less pressure with the close file, but everyone's a little different.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
For sure.
How was the interview at UConn?
UConn was cool. So UConn was one interview, but it was done by two faculty members, and it's the three of you, and it's open file. So I think they just kind of pull stuff from your application and basically just ask you to elaborate. Generally speaking, you should know how to answer, why do you want to be a dentist? Because if you don't know how to answer that like concisely, then it's going to set off a lot of red flags. And at the very beginning of every interview, I was always asked, tell me about yourself, like, just like share a little bit about yourself. And going into the interview process, I like heard that for the first time from my friend, and I thought it was going to be super easy to answer just like on the fly and on the spot without having any sort of preparation. But I realized that if you don't prepare it, then you're just going to ramble about a bunch of nonsense that isn't really connected. So you want to make sure that it's your elevator pitch, and you want to make sure that you're explaining who you are and like who you are as a person and what makes you you, and trying to keep it as concise as possible. But UConn was cool. One of the questions that they asked me was, what is the most interesting procedure you've seen so far? And like they were alluding to like, what have you done with shadowing? And so like that kind of threw me for a bit because I basically just like had seen a lot of general fillings and stuff like that. So that was an interesting question. That was the only school that had asked me that. So something to keep in mind.
Thank you.
Yeah. Some general tips of advice for, I don't know if there are any individuals here that are preparing for interviews or, are getting close to that process. But so I was saying, prepare those two questions and film yourself or ask your family and friends to give you practice interview questions. And I found that I enjoyed videoing myself more. Like, it's a little cringy at first, but you come to realize what type of communicator you are. Like, how do you carry a conversation? What are you doing with your hands as you're speaking? Are you using a lot of filler words like or like? And starting out, I noticed I was saying like a lot. So something that I try to do when I'm speaking in public or speaking to large groups, instead of saying like, I just try to, take a pause and, just go from there and try to not sound like I'm a 12-year-old boy saying like and a lot. But yeah, so just keep in mind what you're doing with your hands, how you're making eye contact with the faculty member, the person interviewing you. Just try to keep in mind all of the little things that your body is doing as you're speaking, because they're just trying to see, like, are you able to carry a conversation? Are you able to adapt to an uncomfortable situation? Because interviews going into them are definitely a little nerve wracking. So they want to see, like, are you able to respond to stress well? Can you speak to someone who you've never spoken to, and sort of how good of a communicator are you? Because in the future, as a dentist, you're going to be talking to a lot of individuals and trying to reassure them, make them feel as comfortable as possible. So you want to demonstrate that you can kind of take all of that in stride and go from there. Interviews are fun though. Again, it's stressful going into them, but once you get there, I can't speak of what's like in terms of COVID now, because it's all virtual, but it is a fun time to be meeting all these new people, and meeting all the other people who are in the same boat as you, meeting people from the school. But yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the tough interview and the environment and everything?
Yeah. So Tufts, I was interviewed by, it was like a joint interview by two people and me. So it was one of the faculty members and then a current, I think it was a fourth year student. And again, it was open file. So like they knew my application, and basically I think Tufts does a really good job of trying to match you with someone who's going to be interviewing you that has some, like, something in common with you. So I want to say, I forget exactly how the student who I was being interviewed by, how him and I had a connection, but like literally, like, we were walking in the elevator and we were going upstairs to the office, and he brought up something that, like, him and I both had a, share connection with, and it sort of just like broke the ice a little bit, just because we could talk about something supernatural that was, meaningful to the both of us. So I appreciated that Tufts does that. And open file, they basically the same thing. They just pulled stuff from my application and asked me to elaborate on it, and it kind of just transitioned from there, depending on how I answered or how the student or the faculty answered. But definitely not very stress inducing at all. It was definitely very smooth and very conversational.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Last piece of advice in terms of when you're preparing for the interview, try to talk to current students if you can. I know that's a little hard, but like if you have some sort of connection, then definitely capitalize on that and scour through their website. Basically, just try to figure out what makes their school unique, and like what is attractive to you of that school, because they're going to ask, obviously, why are you considering us? And if you say something generic that, I love, like, if your only answer for Boston University is that you love Boston, like they're just gonna be like, okay, like, weird. So find things that are unique to that school and just basically spin it to explain why you're interested. And secondly, try to come up with questions to ask during the interview that can't be answered just by you looking at their website, because oftentimes, the interview will end and they'll ask you, like, do you have any questions for me? And if you can't come up with any questions, that's kind of a bad look, just because they're taking time out of their day to explain everything to you. And so you also want to demonstrate to them that as much as they're interviewing you, you're also interviewing them and trying to figure out if this is a school and an environment that you could see yourself doing well in. So you do want to ask a question or a couple of questions to them. And when I say, like, come up with questions that aren't on their website, you don't want to just ask like, what is the grading system like? Just because, you know, three clicks on your computer, you can figure that out. So I often like to ask the faculty members, like, what would you say your students' favorite part about attending blank is, right? And so that's sort of a twofold thing. Like it's helpful because I genuinely want to hear that, but it's also a way for me to gauge like what the relationship is like between the faculty and the students. Like, do the faculty know their students? Are they like attuned with everything that's going on? Do they know them well? Do they know them more? You know, outside of school, like what do they like to do on the weekends? You know, what are some things that are interesting to do in this city? So stuff like that. So basically just me trying to gauge the environment and see like, is this somewhere where I could see myself thriving? So definitely something to keep in mind.
With that in mind, what's life like in Boston? Because I've never been to New England in general, so what's it like out there?
It's cold. It's like I think we're expecting like 9 inches of snow tomorrow. So it's definitely different. I don't know. I'm sorry.
That was my roommate.
Yeah. So it's obviously, you know, the weather's a huge difference, but Boston is super cool because I want to say it's a huge just like healthcare industry hub, right? Like you have the 3 dental schools in Boston are all within a couple miles of each other, right? So there's a lot of collaboration and like a lot of events. Not really so much with COVID now, but you know, before there was the Tri Dental Conference where BU, Harvard, and like Tufts students would come together and sort of just have like symposiums and stuff like that. There's a lot of schools, so like there's a huge like young adult community. Very popular hub for, you know, postgraduate students who are just working in the city. So there's a lot of cool little neighborhoods in and around Boston. Boston itself is very fun. You know, obviously you have the sports teams. You don't really have sports anymore, but it's definitely a very fun city. Not New York. You know, I'm not from New York. I don't really like New York, but it's a lot cleaner, a lot less smelly than New York. But yeah, it's definitely good. It's a good spot.
Why did you pick BU over Tufts if it's in Boston?
Yeah, so one of the main reasons was class size. BU's class size is 117 exactly, and I want to say Tufts is approaching 200, if not a little bit more. And I knew in the back of my head that I wanted somewhere a little bit smaller. So I want to say like the average dental school size is around 100 students. So I wanted to do that. I didn't want to feel like, you know, I was kind of like a small fish in a very big pond, right? Like with Tufts, it has just more students, and that I think that just wasn't for me. And I don't know, I felt really at home in terms of like when I was at my BU interview, and like I knew that was somewhere where I wanted to be. So a combination of those two were the 2 main factors.
Okay, awesome. And is BU? I've never been to BU, but is it a campus or is it a building like Tufts or?
It is just a building, but it's in a neighborhood of Boston that's right next to Boston, like BU Med School, and it's right next to our affiliated hospital. So like there's like the Boston Medical Center. And then in addition to that, it's like a young adult kind of neighborhood too. It's called like the South End of Boston, and you know there's a lot of different restaurants, a lot of different places to eat, you know, stuff like that. So it's definitely not just like an isolated building. It's within like a pretty nice neighborhood of Boston.
Okay, cool, awesome, congrats.
Thank you, appreciate it.
I have one last question. How many dental schools should we apply? Like, what is a good range? Because I know some people apply to 20, but Jesus, like the cost of 20,
yeah,
primary, secondary application, and all that stuff. So
yeah, exactly. So, so like with me, I think like I was around 15, and I think that's definitely still, you know, a little bit on the higher end. And I kind of like, so at the same time I was applying, my older brother was applying to med school, and with med school, you kind of, I think like the vibe for that is that you apply to as many as you can and just go from there. but it's not really the same for dental school. So I want to say like anywhere from maybe like 11 to 13 is like your sweet spot. And so when you're deciding on where you should apply, basically use your GPA and your DAT scores as a comparison to like their median acceptance, and use that as like your baseline comparison, and like, you know, figure out like where geographically you think you could be located. Like, could you see yourself, you know, uprooting and going cross country? Do you prefer to stay on the East Coast? So use those three factors to basically narrow it down to a chunk of schools that you could go to, and then just sort of go from there. But definitely do your research into schools. Don't just apply to schools just to apply to schools. I kind of made that mistake when I was applying, and I wish I had been more considerate with my research.
Is 8 like low amount of dental schools to apply to? Because I actually sit down and I wrote down most of the stuff, but I cannot see myself in like, let's say even 9 schools down. It's just 8, like geographic wise, that I can see myself living for 4 years. So
yeah, I mean, I think 8's a solid number as well. Yeah, I think it just depends on your stats, and could you see yourself, you know, getting interviews from these places? Because you don't want to, like 8's a good number. You don't want to end up in a situation where you've like applied to a bunch of reach schools and you don't really hear back. So I think anywhere from, you know, 8 and up is definitely solid, so long as you, and then like it sounds like you have thought a lot about it. So 8 seems like a good number.
thank you.
Yeah.
I think if there aren't any more questions, we could probably begin to wrap this up. But Shazad, it's been very amazing having you here today. You taking time out of your busy schedule to come talk to us undergrads is very awesome. So we're grateful for that.
Definitely.
And
sorry to cut you off. I think Camille has my email, so if anyone has any questions, you know, about anything pre-dental related, definitely feel free to shoot me an email. My mailbox is always open, so definitely open. But appreciate you guys reaching out. So thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
thank you.
So much.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Why is it still recording?
Can you give me a second? Remember, I'm
Oh,
slow.
you're recording. Okay. I thought it's Alex. That was it.
Did I stop recording? No. Ugh,
Yeah, you did.
I
Alex,
did.
hello. Stop recording.
Alex, stop the recording. So I
Ah,
can-
I don't think Alex is in here. Oh, he is. Oh, he left his
That
Oh,
is so funny.
Right.
Because I'm not recording.
wait, if I end it, does it save?
I don't know. Ask Maya. Maya, does
I
it
don't know either.
I don't know this. Okay.
Wasn't someone else also recording?
It was